presented.
Okay, thanks, Brian and Margaret. All those in favor of the motion to approve our agenda, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Anyone opposed, please say no. Okay, our motion carries 4-0. Do we need to do a roll call, Sean, or excuse our absent members?
I would, just for the sake of it.
Okay. So I can see that we have Brian Cherry is with us, Dan, Mark, and Margaret, and then of course myself. So I guess I would take a motion to excuse our absent members. I don't know, are we at a quorum with 4?
There's
Or
5
5,
counting you.
5? 5? Yeah, okay. Thanks. So that should be our quorum. Could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to excuse the absent members.
Okay,
I'll second the motion to excuse the absent members.
thank you. And all those in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Okay, motion carries to excuse our absent members. Okay, so that'll take us to our public comment. So Sean, do you want to start with reading what you have, or?
Yep.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Sorry, I'm just pulling it up real quick. I received 2 written comments prior to the meeting. The first is from Catherine Parker of 322 West Ohio Street. Dear Commissioners and Mr. Hobbins, simply put, the structures in the vault proposal would ruin the character of yet another portion of our limited downtown shoreline. Please do not allow this to go forward. If parking and housing and another boutique hotel are needed, we can take the time to entertain offers and designs that would be both beneficial to the city and its residences and pleasing to the eye. And then the next comment is from Tony Eppensteiner, 1604 West Avenue. I want to express my objection to the proposal to transfer money from the LDFA to the Vault Marquette Brownfield Development Plan. I am generally supportive of development in Marquette, especially the reuse of the old savings bank building. I think the city has in the past done a good job of balancing the needs of new business enterprises with protecting the beauty and spirit of what makes Marquette the jewel of the UP. However, I find the proposed development to be heedless of the character and ambiance of Lakeshore Drive and the waterfront, and a prime example of trying to pack 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag. In addition, the construction of these buildings would seriously impact the views of the lake enjoyed by successful and long-established businesses. In light of this, to transfer the city funds to the project's Brownfield Development Plan would be inappropriate and a slap in the face to the citizens and business owners who have made Marquette a lively and viable community. And then we do have 1 phone comment that I can let in. Hello, someone at the number 509-850-6334, are you there?
Yes, hello, I am. My name is Jonathan Johnson.
If you'd like to make a public comment, you have to state your name and address, and I believe this board gets 3 minutes. Is that right, Leslie? Yeah, 3 minutes.
Wonderful, thanks so much for having me. Do I go right now?
Yes.
All right, my name is Jonathan Johnson. My Marquette address is 507 Spruce. Sadly, I'm not currently living back in my hometown yet, though I'm working hard to get home. So my present mailing address is 25 North 4th Street in Cheney, Washington at 99004. Again, that's 25 N period 4TH in Cheney, which is spelled CHENEY. Washington is WA 9904. That's my permanent mailing address as of right now. First of all, I'd like to offer my compliments to the committee on your hard work for our beloved city. In my years following city leadership, I've never been more pleased or impressed than I have been the last few years. My comments as follows. The view of Lake Superior is a public good and a valuable resource. I'd respectfully ask that you not give this proposed vault development the right to this view at the expense of long-standing, thriving, even iconic local businesses, the Veerling and Elizabeth's. My wife and I had our first date at the Veerling 35 years ago, and I know I speak for tens of thousands of patrons from over many decades when I say the view from this restaurant is indeed a public resource. I ask that you prioritize that resource and the long economic, employment, and public enjoyment success of this restaurant and neighboring Elizabeth's over this new vault development. If, on the other hand, the developers would be willing to change the height specifications of their projects, my feelings might be different. Thanks again for your skillful service and stewardship of our beloved hometown. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And then we just had someone join the meeting, the name of Lily Simmons. I'm not sure if you recognize that or if I should let her in for a comment.
I would imagine that's for a comment.
Looks like it's trying to connect.
Okay.
Hi, Lily, are you there? Lily? Can you
She's
turn your
saying-
microphone off if you'd like to give public comment?
No comment. She's
okay.
with the, okay.
Got it.
We saw that too.
Yep.
Okay.
That looks to be the end of public comment.
Okay, so here, seeing no more comment, I'll close this portion of our agenda and then move on to new business. We have the interlocal agreement with Marquette Brownfield Authority, the Vault Marquette project, to discuss. So I know we have members of the Brownfield and the project here to answer our questions. I don't know if Sean, do you want to give kind of like a high level overview on how we should proceed today, or if you have any recommendations, I'm open to that.
Yeah, you know, I'm not here to really answer questions. I'm just trying to facilitate this meeting, but you know, I think John and Jen Julian and Barry Polson we're prepared to give a presentation if
Okay.
that's what you'd like, and Mac is prepared to speak on the Brownfield components and the funding components of this. So if you'd like to go that route, I'm sure they would be open to it. Otherwise,
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would like to hear the proposal, or some of it anyway.
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep this brief and really focus on your questions. But I guess John and Jen, why don't you start off?
Yeah.
We have, I guess, John, do you need the screen?
Yeah, does it? I think it should pop up when I start talking, hopefully. So yeah, I wanted to give a brief introduction. Like Barry said, we'll try to keep it brief and allow for as many questions as possible. You know, John and Jen, Julene, we own the BraveWorks. BraveWorks, we're really developers, operators, entrepreneurs, and our mission is to build projects and brands that create positive lifestyles in our communities. We started back in 2006, and it was with reading a newspaper article in a local paper in Houghton about the desperate need for purpose-built housing and purpose-built student housing. And from there, the idea was born, and we built our first duplex, and then we built another one, and we built another one. And over the course of the last 15 years, we've actually developed, built, own, and operate 392 housing units in the greater Houghton area. And we've also, during that time, built up to over 10 businesses and have in excess of 500 employees and contractors over the course of 2 states. We operate here in California. In 2009, we bought our first historic downtown building in Houghton, which at the time was an abandoned building and the roof had recently collapsed. We turned this building into the first new residential units that downtown Houghton had seen in nearly decades. And from there, we've saved 4 additional historic and iconic buildings and rebuilt them from the ground up. And by doing so, we've really helped bring new life to Houghton's downtown district. And it's become a passion of ours to try to save and enhance and rebuild and repurpose historic iconic buildings. More recently, we've gotten into the hospitality industry, and we debuted with the Vault Hotel in downtown Houghton and in the historic Houghton National Bank building, another iconic gem of the UP. And Jen, along with our team of collaborators, built the Vault brand from the ground up. And we're just not another cookie cutter hotel looking to charge as much as possible for a head in a bed. The Vault serves a bigger purpose than that. We are an experience-based hotel, and we provide this by buying local and providing a locals experience by working with the neighborhood restaurateurs that cater our breakfasts and working with the farmers market vendors to bring fresh new pastries and other treats to our guests. We also work with the local breweries and coffee roasters to quench our guests' thirst. Everything about the Vault Marquette and the Vault Houghton is the Marquette and Houghton that we all love. And what we're here today to really talk about is the potential of building a public parking structure on what is now private land. And by approving this interlocal agreement, what it will allow us to do is to continue to work with the city, to continue to work with the city engineers on an operating agreement and a development agreement that will address many of the concerns and details of the design and the conceptual project. What we are presenting here in a few minutes is the concept that we brought forth today. And this concept was produced by countless hours of design work by Barry. Barry's actually been working on this building for most of his career in some way or another, and also countless hours of feedback from city staff, the neighboring businesses that were mentioned, the property owners, the neighboring property owners, and the several public hearings that we've held with the DDA and City Commission. And I think most importantly, Barry will talk about this in the design. We completely agree that any development on this property needs to be done in a reasonable fashion, and we think we really have. We've tried to develop a property that maintains the view sheds of the neighboring businesses, and those were actually the first people we started talking to when we engaged in this development, was the Verling, Elizabeth, Frank, our neighbor, the different property owners around the property. Those were the first people we started talking to. And we wanted to make sure that their needs were addressed. And I think Barry can show really how we've done that in our design and how we've been able to maintain those public asset view sheds. We agree on that. That is something that's super important for us to do here. And I think, with that, we'll hand it off to Barry from the design perspective, and then Matt can follow up with the Brownfield elements and the funding purposes here. And we can finish it up with a question Q&A from the board members. So Barry?
Yeah. Well, John, do you have the images, the presentation?
Yeah. Yes, I can screen share if that's how you want
to
do
it.
it. 1 second.
Yeah, I guess as John's pointing that out, we started looking at this when John and Jen first, we started talking about a vault in Marquette, and we've looked at several locations, and really the savings bank is what I keep coming back to, because it's really the iconic building of downtown Marquette. And knowing that it was going to be on the market too, that, it was a good opportunity. It's the savings bank building, and then of course the 2 parking lots along Lakeshore Boulevard. Again, it is all private property. And our approach to the project is absolutely to just bow down to the savings bank building. It's such an icon. It's certainly my favorite building. We saved the orphanage because I'm a nut for historic buildings. So we are absolutely going to respect and preserve the savings bank building and through this project. Let's go to the next image here. There is now, again, there's a gap of property to the south where the rail trestles used to run through to a former ore dock, and then the parking lots. Go to the next. John. There it goes. Yeah, you can see the lovely parking lots. So these parking lots have been there for a long time. There was really very little on these sites except for the trestle, which ran between the savings bank and 107 South Front. And then there was a large building. You can still see some of the walls that are left. Currently, this is in quite disrepair, but once again, it is all private property. So next image here. The way we approach every project and what makes life really simple is to always follow the rules. So back in 2014 or so, the form-based code for downtown waterfront Marquette was adopted. This was worked on for quite some time and went through an incredibly long public process. And these are the zones that are set. If you look at this image, there's two different zones for the property. The front street, the little darker red line, is it's called General 5. It allows for 5 stories above Front Street. The pink line to the Lakeshore Boulevard side is G3. This allows 3 stories at the street and then set back 8 feet and go up 2 more stories. So also 5 stories. Now this we could build on the entire site. By right, without anyone stopping it, we could build 5 stories on this entire site. We're not going to do that because we are respectful to the neighbors and to the history and to the community asset that those restaurants are. We agree with that. So let's go to the next image here. So this is just a quick overview of what we're proposing here. Is we're going to preserve the savings bank building. We're going to use the savings bank building as hotel suites, and then we're going to connect them to new construction that'll be to the east. You see the light blue area. This is going to be a glass atrium, which is totally transparent, to connect the new building to the old. And so you can actually see all of the savings bank building from inside and outside. So it's totally intact with its form. And we give it some space. So to the east, we're going to build a hotel building, and to the south of that will be a residential building. In between there, you see the green area. This is actually a green roof, which will be over the parking, and I'll get into that more in a minute. But with these spaces, the green spaces, we are absolutely preserving and framing views for the Beerling and Elizabeths. This was very important from the beginning, and then also for 107 South Front. So these are narrow buildings which create nice little view corridors. Let's go on to the next. Again, the savings bank building stands proud, stands by itself, the glass connection. And then the form-based code dictates how big and where, how many windows, the areas of glass, and how much you have to break the form up. So that's what you're seeing here in this design. Let's do the next one. Is these forms that step down the street towards Lakeshore and you know, form the space for the hotel. In this corner on Lakeshore in East Washington, there will be a kind of a loungy restaurant, kind of more of a small plate sort of space. Right above that on the second floor, there's actually going to be event space for up to 200-person events. And then up above that, we get into the hotel rooms. And here you can see the 3 stories, set back 8, and go up 2 more. Now, right to the south of that, the hotel building, let's go to the next one here. You'll see a gap and a little green area. What that is actually that green roof between the buildings over the parking, and on the street edge of it will be an outdoor event space. And on the on the south end of this is the residential block. There'll still be commercial space on the street and then residential units above. We're looking at 36 units. Some of them will actually be in the attainable classification. So we are addressing the need for all kinds of housing in Marquette with this project. Another part of this project is on the very corner. You can see how we have really a 1-story building. This is to keep the Veerlings' view uninterrupted down to the fish dock or to the ore dock. So they will be keeping that view space. That space on that 1-story will be a maker space, which is something called for in the downtown plan that was done last year. This will be a space that can be used for various groups for making things, of course. It's also something that we're proposing that the smart zone could get involved with. When we brought this up to Jen Tucker at the NBDC, she suggested that the smart zone might need a space, or at least help direct people to it. So there is a tie-in to your group. Let's go to the next image. And just a comment too, this is really conceptual at this point. The question at hand for this meeting, the city commission meetings, is really, do you want this parking structure, done through this brownfield? And so the real focus of this meeting is about these brownfield public improvements. And we're going to go through those. The design of the building itself will be dictated by the planning zoning process. So that's not what's being questioned at this point. And we have a long way to go on designing it. So, but the things that we're putting in this plan is the parking structure, and then several street improvements and things that were called for in this downtown plan. So let's go to the next image. So we're going to walk you through the layers of parking. There's actually 4 levels. It's 200 plus parking spaces. There's 1 level below Lakeshore Boulevard. And you can see the sort of public circulation areas in the yellow. And let's go to the next one. So as we get up to the street level, we now have the commercial space fronting the street. Again, this is form-based code that wants you to have active street spaces and hide parking. So that's what we're doing. Next level up. And you can see that the first story spaces are very tall too, really robust, kind of historic in nature with their ceiling heights. As the parking goes up, you're getting up above grade, so you have windows to Main Street, to Washington Street, and also to Lakeshore Boulevard. The main entry will be in off of Lakeshore Boulevard for all the public parking. And again, this is public parking. I know that it's hard for people to believe this, but it's 100% public parking. So as you get up to this level, this is the top level of parking. We're starting to see the footprints of the buildings take shape. And you'll also see coming down from the Savings Bank building, there is a drive. And so we're going to create an entrance drive off of Front Street for hotel guests only. This is where they'll pull in, check in, and then enter into the parking structure. So let's go. Well, another thing here too, that we are creating a walkway from the parking structure that will run up to Front Street from the parking. So the public parking has 4 access points, 1 in each direction, in and out of the structure. So very easy to understand, not complicated, not scary because you have windows. Let's go to the next. Here you can see that the green roof areas, and these green roofs are actually part of a very sophisticated stormwater system in which the rain is captured onto these roofs and held. So when you get a big downpour, you're holding the water. And then from there, it goes down into a cistern below grade. And from there, it's cleaned and then run out into the storm system, which then eventually runs to the lake. So we're capturing and holding the water on the site. So next image here. Here, just to illustrate the views that we're creating. We're actually going to construct a new outdoor eating area for Elizabeth's. And the Veerling view is open. Now, the view between the hotel block and the housing block is 62 feet wide. And this is the width of Washington Street. So we all know as you drive down east on Washington, you look out over the lake, it's such a gorgeous view. This is the view that both Frank will have at 107 and the Veerling the Elizabeth's will have. The Veerling will have all of the Main Street and that open view is illustrated here. So let's go to the next one. So a little cross section, you can see all the multi-layers of parking. You can see that little glass atrium on the end of the savings bank. That space will just have walkways that'll come from the elevators and stairs that'll be in the new construction to access each of the floors. So, and again, you can see how that opening for Elizabeth's deck and Frank's building is preserved with this design. Let's go to the next one. These are sort of the public entry points. Again, the main entrance for vehicles down on Lakeshore. The entire parking structure is two-way traffic. It's very, very easy to understand. It's not a complicated, annoying parking structure. The main kind of circulation point for pedestrians to and from the parking, we're proposing will be on Main Street here. And we're actually going to create a new alley space behind Veerling and Elizabeth's, an actual legitimate alley. And then, so you're coming out at that mid block by that alley to get up to town. The downtown plan calls for enhancements in Main Street. We're looking at just the area next to the project to enhance that walkway up along the Veerling side. Plan also calls for creating more of an arrival point down at the harbor as you come down the Main Street sidewalk. And we're also looking at some traffic control concepts to just make it a little slower down there. So let's go to the next one. Again, we went to the downtown plan to see what kind of other public assets besides the parking that could be included in the Brownfield plan. And we're not proposing to design these, we're proposing that here's the funds for that. And that we would go through a public process to come up with what those would actually be. Again, this is just, here's a pot of money that this project will create to do these things. So let's go on to the next. This is about the makerspace. Yeah. The other thing, it specifically called for enhancing the sidewalk experience along the west side of Lakeshore Boulevard. We're certainly going to do that by creating some commercial space. We're going to make that a little wider. We're going to adjust Lakeshore Boulevard slightly. Not going to touch the bike path. Just to make things fit and feel more comfortable for pedestrians. Because right now it's really limited space down there. Okay, next one. Also, the downtown plan called for enhancing the connection down to the harbor to Matson Park from downtown. And again, we're not saying this is a design, we're just illustrating that there are funds available in this Brownfield plan to do something down there. So next. And then this is an image of the entry we're talking about creating in the gap between the Savings Bank and 107 South Front, and shows that pedestrian walkway. This will be a barrier-free, accessible route covered from the parking up to Front Street as well. So you got, again, 4 directions that you can go once you've parked. Let's go to the next. Again, this is sort of a view of that entry space, that entry experience for the hotel guests. You can see the atrium making the connection. And again, the Savings Bank standing proud. I think there's one more. Yeah, just a little Photoshop here. But again, it's really, we've approached all the stuff we've designed, everywhere we go, especially in Marquette, is we really try to build within the context. And so looking at like this image, what you see, the colors, the textures, the materials, the forms that are already in downtown Marquette. And again, we're not done with this design. We'll certainly tweak it. But the idea is to work with the form of downtown Marquette, work within the fabric, using the vocabulary that exists. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. And Mac, do you want to give your presentation, and then we can always pull this back up and entertain questions specific to this, to the design.
Sure, sounds good. If that's okay with the chair and the group, happy to do that. So, do you want to
I think that's great. Thank you.
Do you want to unshare, John, and I'll share if I can. Turn my phone off here. Go back to the beginning and start. Just make one quick change here if I can. there you go. Everybody see that okay? Great, thanks. Just as a quick introduction, I'm not sure that I've met everyone. My name is Mac McClelland. I'm a Brownfield consultant. I've been the Brownfield consultant representing the Brownfield Authority in the city since 2009, and have been involved in most of the projects in Marquette, or all of the projects since that time, and most of the projects in Marquette. So I work for the Brownfield Authority and the city in these projects. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the preliminary arrangements that are talked about. I said one time that, you know, enough of those boring pictures, we can talk about the exciting numbers and contracts and arrangements here in government documents. So, but really the key thing that provides this opportunity for us is the ability to capture taxes for brownfield eligible activities. And that includes a brownfield plan that's approved locally and Act 321 work plans that are approved by the state for that capture. Important to this project because both the DDA and LDFA have rights to various certain taxes. There is the ability to share those that future brownfield TIF to make the project possible and to pay off those eligible activities. There's agreements that are going to be negotiated and approved along these. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the Brownfield Reimbursement Agreement, which is a standard arrangement of what the developer is going to do and what the Brownfield Authority is going to do in terms of capturing and reimbursing taxes. In this case, there's going to need to be a development agreement that says how we're going to work through the process of the public parking facility, both the design, the operation, and ultimate financing for it. And then an operating agreement with the DDA. This would be a public parking facility and operated by the DDA as part of their parking system. So there's those agreements that go as well. The basic concept and a big advantage here is that the developers design and construct the public parking facility along with the rest of the project, all in a unified contract, with review and construction by a parking consultant that's hired by the City Brownfield Authority and DDA. So we'll have input to that process to make certain that, you know, we don't end up shorting on a capital side and expenditure side in order to, you know, to spend extra dollars on the operating side. We want to make certain that the operations fit. So we'll have some opportunity to provide input on the design for that. And another great advantage is once that full building is completed, so we know that those revenues are available, the Brownfield Authority issues the bonds. It does include the city's full faith and credit, and purchases the parking facility as a completed asset, and that is included in part of the completed project. So we know that those TIF revenues are going on. We don't have to build the parking deck and then hope that there's revenues, adequate revenues to pay off those bonds. We'll know that when we purchase it. Those bond payments are also in first position for the brownfield TIF revenue. So those will be secured and have those capabilities, and the developers will receive a balance to pay off their private eligible activities, which are a relatively small proportion, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So really, you know, kind of the advantages that when John and Jen came to us talking about this concept and talking about this idea, there really seemed to be a great opportunity. One, it meets the downtown strategy, Marquette downtown strategy, to look at developing parking facilities, one of the key things for the DDA as well. And it also includes prioritizing joint development opportunities that this case is. And here's sort of the killer app, as they say, is that the Brownfield Plan doubles the available capture for public improvements, for public parking improvements, and adds 46.5% state tax capture, and also about 4.3% ISD tax capture. I'll just say quickly that fortunately, schools are held harmless in this case. The state education fund pays the per pupil foundation grants, and so there's no loss to the schools in terms of revenues. And a recent amendment to the act reimburses intermediate school districts as well for their capture in that case. So our schools are held harmless. This kind of gives you an idea of that tax capture allocation. Again, about 55% is local, including the intermediate school district, and about 46 is state, excuse me. The DDA has rights to capture the local taxes, which include city, library, trail, and counties. So they capture those taxes. They do not capture ISD taxes nor the other taxes that are available. And so if this was just a DDA project, they would only have half of those revenues available for them. By going through the brownfield process, we can capture state taxes and essentially double the money that's available for a public park, predominantly for a public parking facility in this situation. And this is, kind of an important issue because of the experience with the DDA with a standalone parking deck. It's essentially enclosed, and it will really minimize any weather wear that the project will have, and minimize that long-term maintenance of a structure that's necessary as well. There's cost savings with the building integration, shared walls, shared facilities. I joked one time that all we have to pay for is the paint on the floor, but probably there'll be a few more expenses that might be included in that building integration. Also importantly, it doesn't require separate property for public parking. If the DDA goes alone on this piece and tries to do it, if they have the revenues from the whole district, this is an integrated project. It, utilizes existing property for both development and for the parking, and wouldn't require separate standalone parking property for a parking facility. It does minimize the risk because we'll know that the project is completed and what those tax revenues and assessed value is, but still provide some opportunity for input into the design early on. There's an assured revenue stream with that completed building, and the hotel parking needs really fit well with public parking needs during the day. And I just want to kind of emphasize something that, from experience that I had on another project, I feel very strongly, and I think all parties have agreed, that there won't be any reserved spaces. There won't be, say, this is only where the hotel folks can park. This is only where the residents can park. Because of the configuration, the hotel folks will park up in the northwest corner around in that area, and the residences will probably park down in the lower area. But it's all open and available for anybody to park in any place at any time, really increasing the utilization and effectiveness of the parking deck. So there won't be a sign that says you can't park here, this is for the hotel only. The hotel guest will have to, everyone will park in the available spots there. I just want to quickly run through, the brownfield documents that are in place. We're starting first with a brownfield plan, which is really the budget document. It's like a municipal budget document. He said, here's the maximum eligible activity cost. Here's what the qualification process is. Here's what the impacts are. So that's really the enabling document. The interlocal agreements are an important part of that, because without those interlocal agreements, as I'll show shortly, there's not enough funding to meet the plan objectives and pay off those eligible activities. The Act 321 work plan is a separate document, and I'll talk about the interlocal agreements obviously in a moment. But the Act 321 work plan is submitted to the state for that state tax capture, to the Michigan Strategic Fund for non-environmental eligible activities, which the parking deck is, and to EGLE, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy for environmental related activities. And there are environmental considerations on this site through a recent phase 2 environmental site assessment. So those are kind of the enabling documents that are available. And then we get to the agreements and the contracts, which really provide all of the obligations in this, and kind of the implementation. This is sort of like with the capital improvements plan, here's the budget, and now we're talking about the construction contracts in essence. The Brownfield reimbursement agreement, as I mentioned, is a standard agreement that lays out the terms and conditions for reimbursement. The development agreement, as we talked about, will be a complex document that talks about all the arrangements for design, for input, for operations, for purchase, in ongoing maintenance or ongoing operations, ongoing arrangements that are necessary. The operating agreement will be with the Downtown Development Authority, and will outline all of the things that are necessary, including long-term maintenance considerations and how the facility will operate. Again, there'll be strong input in the design and the operations and the equipment selected for that to ensure the most efficient operation for the project. Now we get down to the matter at hand, the interlocal agreements. As you know, the DDA and LDFA already capture certain taxes that are available, certain tax increments that are available. And the Brownfield Authority only has rights to capture whatever's remaining without an interlocal agreement in that case. You all know the DDA or the LDFA Smart Zone was approved in 2014, included some state and local capture on all properties in the city And at that time, there were some properties that were accepted or left out of that, both existing and anticipated brownfield projects, including the Duke Life Point, the former hospital, and the new hospital as well as Clistow and the We Energy project. The LDFA captures 4 mills of the city millage up to $400,000, and state tax capture for 12 mills for non-homestead properties and 3 mills for homestead properties. So 50% of the available state taxes on every property except those outlined in red in the city. And again, for the Brownfield Authority to capture any taxes that the LDFA has rights to in any of these non-red areas, there is an interlocal agreement under the Urban Cooperation Act that's necessary. We have the LDFA and Brownfield Authority have approved and executed 2 previous interlocal agreements, one for the 231 West Patisserie project, 231 West Washington, and the other more recently for the UP State Bank at 1016 West Washington as well. So just again, here's a little picture of the tax capture allocation that is laid out for properties. Again, the LDFA can capture 4 mills of the city, but in the DDA has rights to those 4 mills first, as I understand, and so the DDA does not capture the 4 mills of the city within the LDFA does not capture the 4 mills of the city taxes within the DDA. So kind of what's left, again, if it's non-homestead, if it's homestead, there's 3 mills that are captured by the LDFA. I believe all of this project will be non-homestead or commercial. The residential units are proposed to be apartments, so they would not be homestead based. And so it would apply to the 12 mills or the 50% of the 24 mills that would be assessed. And so what that would leave essentially for Brownfield Authority without the interlocal agreements is the intermediate school district taxes and 6 mills of the operating taxes. The actual 50% of the state education tax under a Brownfield plan actually goes to the state for state Brownfield fund. So the only available taxes without the DDA and LDFA interlocal agreements would be this portion here. And there's not enough revenues to pay, certainly for the public parking deck as a result. In addition, the state requires local participation for state tax capture approval for non-environmental eligible activities. So they won't give you state funding unless, in this case, the DDA doesn't provide the interlocal agreement. So there's no project as a result. The project won't move forward. And in this case, because the LDFA captures half of the state taxes, really the full amount of state tax capture is necessary to adequately reimburse the costs for the public parking deck. The project does extend. It's a big expense that's involved there. And because the developers did not fully build out the whole area, there's a little bit more limited revenues that are available for the parking deck there. And again, in order to make that happen, interlocal agreements are requested to be approved by the LDFA and DDA. They've already been approved by the Brownfield Authority to provide for that capture for the Brownfield eligible activities. Just kind of one quick component, most of the costs in this Brownfield plan are for public non-environmental costs, both the public parking facility and the public improvements that are proposed. There is it appears that there may be some needs for some environmental eligible activities. The other non-environmental eligible activities include some work on the site and site preparation and some relocation of utilities that are necessary here. This contingent is related to the need for special foundations. Barry's assured me that they're not necessary, but it doesn't look like those are going to be necessary. So this will even be a larger proportion of public costs for the Brownfield plan in that case. Just to kind of give an idea about what this means in terms of revenues, right now the project generates about $28,000 in state and local taxes as a result. After the build out of the project, the local taxes will be roughly in the range of about $300,000 increasing. We use a 1.5% escalator over time, which has been kind of the state standard for the last 20 or 30 years. And then this is kind of the kicker. This would be the only available funds for the DDA if there was no brownfield plan. We can double that money in essence by including the state tax capture as well. So there is a major bond issue, and this kind of gives an idea about, and this includes all of the public improvements. We'll probably not necessarily do that with a bond issue. You can see there's a little bit of shortfall early. There are some dollars available. We would work out an arrangement to cover any of that shortfall early, but so a predominant portion of these revenues all go towards those public improvements. As part of the schedule, this was through a whole series of conversations and discussions with the city. The project did go to the Brownfield Authority on the 17th, and they approved the Brownfield Plan, Act 301 Work Plan, and interlocal agreements. The commission established their public hearing at the meeting on June 28th. We hope that the interlocal agreements will be approved by the LDFA and DDA today and tomorrow. The city commission is holding a public hearing. We'll consider the Brownfield Plan on Monday. And then it's about a 60-day process at least to get state tax capture approval for that. But there's been conversations with the state, and they're very excited about the project and believe it fits in strongly with their approach for state tax capture. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can go back to the project itself.
Thank you, Mac. I know we'll have questions, so I'll open it up to my board for some questions.
I think one of the public comments kind of thought we were giving money. What this basically does is we won't capture the new revenue generated from the taxes is what we're agreeing to. So I just wanted to clarify.
That's absolutely correct. And I'll just say, really without that, action, there's not enough revenue to pay for the project, and there won't be a project, so we'll be back at that $28,000 level. But yes, that's very true. It's future taxes.
I have a couple questions. These are more macro. Are the project, the couple that was just on, John and Julian, I have a general question for you. If you couldn't get this brownfield and this revenue agreement approved, could you afford to still go through with the project?
In its current state and design, no.
It would look like a much different project at that point. We're able to reduce the scale significantly, to be able to provide public parking and in a different scale. And so what Barry has shown with the schematics is much more parking than the project would ever need if in the current state. So I guess the alternative would be if there wasn't public parking, any developer could purchase this property, and at the price of purchasing it that it's currently listed at, it is priced for redevelopment. It's not priced where somebody could simply purchase it and be able to continue to rent it as it is because of the high redevelopment price. So yeah, I guess that it would look like a different project.
Yeah. To answer your question, the project that we presented today would not be viable without the brownfield money, without the public parking infrastructure portion. The project that would come back would probably be, it would have to be a much larger scale, and at which that point, with no public, no request or no offering for the public parking, there really wouldn't. The use by right, as Matt kind of mentioned, is basically a 5-story building on the footprint of the property. We don't think that's right. We would rather preserve those views and rather have a project that's more in line with the scale of the neighborhood. And thus kind of the whole reason why we went down this road of pursuing a brownfield and a public parking structure.
Well, the design looks beautiful. I mean, you guys have, Barry, have done a nice job with that, and keeping the theme and all the materials of the area were wonderful. I have a question for the city, another macro question. Mary, good to see you. Mary Schlitz. So we've all talked about this, and I've never researched it, so I have a macro question is, with all this brownfield, and I know the recaptures, and I know there's bond issues, but if you look just at that last slide, and let me tell you, with all your presentation, I have a myriad of questions under all of this. But Mary, how does the city generate revenue, and how much is this impeding us in any way in which my concern is a large portion of the city is already tax exempt. And so with the remaining properties, how much do we get and generate from that? Mary, how does this affect the city? And I do know that, you get to keep the current property tax revenue and any improvements that, is going to pay off these bonds and go for this brownfield. But can you give me a little bit of feedback on that?
I can do my best. What's interesting about a brownfield plan like this is that it really concentrates that revenue stream. So even if we do move forward with the bonding of this project, at least that capture provides a revenue stream for the city to be able to pay those bonds. This project in particular, I guess I did kind of want to quote what the LDFA is already collecting on this property. Your capture on this property as it is right now is about $600 annually. In total, I know the city and the state and local capture for this fiscal year, the LDFA's 2021 capture is going to be about 1.2 million. So I'm getting off topic of your question, but this development is very interesting, like I said, because it provides that revenue stream for any of the debt that the city is going to be getting into.
Okay. Does that impede, for example, are there other costs that we're not looking at here? For example, beautiful presentation on how how this ties into all the DDA and the revenue that's generated there and how the bonds are. I'm assuming that how they're going to be paid for. That's great. But what about are there any tertiary costs or around extra costs to the city that we have to incur to develop that we wouldn't have if this project didn't go forward?
As I recall, this plan has been kind of, I don't want to say they kind of cherry picked, but they certainly did pick certain plans that the city already had that they could roll into this plan. So in a way, the city is getting a benefit of having a way to get those projects funded that we don't have to come up for on our own, because the capture will help to fund those projects that we already had in the works.
If I might just add in, no, it's great. It's perfect. If I just might add in is that, city taxes represent about 25% of the total tax bill. And by these brownfield, especially the public improvements, obviously the public improvements mean that, there's 75% outside revenue to pay for plans that, fit in with already existing plans. So there's a leverage, there by using brownfields to be able to do that. And I think that we've tried to incorporate those surprise costs related to the development through the road improvements and those sort of pieces as well. We're looking, to structure a long-term maintenance fund for the parking deck through that as well. So to really be kind of a self-sustaining project and address any of those tertiary, costs, because those are always important. You come up with something like that and then, oh, we've got to do this, upgrade the water main or something of that nature. In this case, there's got to be a major relocation of an electric line. And so that's going to be able to be paid for through this as well. So it wouldn't have to come out of BLP funds.
Okay.
I think one other,
go ahead.
I was just going to say one other advantage that I say, and I'll shut up, is there's awful opportunity, and I've been doing this for a long time around the state. The great part is spin-off redevelopment that happens as a result of these projects. And we might be able to see that from the West Washington project, the Liberty Way, Staybridge Suites. That area. Certainly DLP made a difference, there and some of that stuff, but you can already see that, there's with this project, especially in other projects, is that properties around the area begin to invest. They see there's great opportunities, there's greater markets, and for this project is going to generate a lot of traffic. And so those opportunities that aren't part of the capture, the brownfield capture, but would be resulting capture for LDFA and DDA. In that case. So.
Okay, and I have one last question. And then I'll let the rest of the board. Sorry, I don't want to dominate all the questions, but important. So my understanding is also then that this is the parking is all public, right? That's total ownership. And then so that means it's tax exempt, but we'll capture revenue through the parking?
Through the private development, through the hotel and the residences and the savings bank. So the parking deck will be tax exempt, but the taxes are generated by the private development to pay off the cost for the public parking deck.
Yeah, and to answer that question a little further, as Barry had mentioned in the design, there's no dedicated or committed parking spaces in the structure. It's everybody's going to be paying to be there. So there's a revenue stream that the DDA would capture to help operate it and offset any operating costs. And, so it's not a hindrance to anybody, and it actually, so what it might be losing in taxes, they are gain. So if it's privately owned, they would not get any of the revenues from the parking, and they would just get the taxes. In this scenario, they get all the revenues, but not the taxes. So, you could argue which way is better, but I guess on paper, it certainly looks better that they are collecting all the revenues from all the users of the parking structure versus collecting a smaller portion of taxes.
And without any capital costs to create the park.
Correct.
Because that's covered by the TIF.
If I were a hotel guest, I think would prefer to have reserved parking closer to the hotel entrance instead of 2 stories down.
Right, and I mean, it will just depend on those, how the traffic flows once it's operating. Many hotels in downtowns actually have valets, which would certainly be a plan for this area, so that you would pull your car up, and we made plenty of space for that. And a valet would actually go and park your car, and you get a valet ticket, and then, and then it would be paid for. So.
Yep.
One other question, Barry would know this: the water table down there, how high is that?
We're about 20 feet above the lake level, current lake level, right there. So we're only going to go down 10 feet here. So we'll still have plenty of room above the groundwater.
Okay. Thanks.
I'll just add a comment briefly, and then I'll open it back up for more questions. I was at the City Commission meeting on the 28th of June, and I had a chance to chat with Joe on the project, and I know they were excited on the makerspace option that we saw on the design. So I think from the Smart Zones perspective, having that facility available downtown, they would be pretty excited about that. I don't know how the collaboration would work in that, but I know that was something that Joe and his team were interested in.
Just to comment on that, that makerspace is not an eligible brownfield activity, but that is just something that John and Jen are putting into the picture. I mean, they're providing, building the space to be, however arrangements made. So, but
yeah,
it is a gift.
Yeah, Jen and I have both been deeply involved in the Smart Zone in Houghton, and we were clients in several of our businesses, and we've also worked with some of the businesses that have spun off from the Smart Zone. And one of the things that we've talked about, Marilyn Clark, the previous director of the Smart Zone in Houghton, and we talked about it a ton, is, there is a difference between a private makerspace and the quasi-public ones. And we think there's a ton of value to having the private makerspace side of it too. And we're working with actually a branding consultant out of Detroit, Haj Flemings, who's a Michigan Tech grad, oddly enough, and one of the best branding experts in Michigan, probably the Midwest. He works intimately with collaborative workspaces and maker spaces all over the country, and most notably with Nipsey Hussle's collaborative workspace and creative workspace in Los Angeles. And so we're being able to draw and tap into a lot of really cool resources that I think Marquette is just ready to accept. We're at that point where there's enough in entrepreneurial activity that having this private makerspace will really help spin off some cool things.
Thanks for that additional comment. Any other members have questions or comments? Margaret?
My first question is for Mary. Hi, Mary. I remember at the work session for this project, you very clearly stating at the end that with the amount of prior bonding the city has used to finance various large ticket projects throughout the city, that you felt as in your professional role as CFO for the city, that the city was approaching what you called the bond limit, whereby you may not be able to continue to go back to your bonding sources and obtain further bonds if this project goes forward. Could you please make sure that I'm not putting words in your mouth? Can you please clarify the statement, which is, my understanding is if we go forward with this project, the city will be hamstrung on bonding for the foreseeable future because this project is so expensive. Please clarify what I'm saying. If I'm wrong, say I'm wrong. If I have a glimmer of truth in what I'm saying, please elaborate in your financial role, okay?
I did speak about that at the work session, and the city is keeping an eye on that bonding capacity. But that's kind of outside of what the LDFA would need to worry about in this project. So those problems, those issues and planning and budgets will be addressed as they come up.
Well, this whole thing is about taking money that the LDFA would apply to other activities and applying it to this project. And I think that is within the purview of this board. How much will this get in the way of the LDFA being able to fund the projects that we've been funding?
I'll address that, Margaret. The dollars that you're currently getting will stay, okay? If without this brownfield plan, this project will not go forward in this manner. So you know, these are the tax dollars that are being used to create the public parking in this for downtown, which is a recognized need. So that's the beauty of that. The other thing regarding the bonding limit, I know this has been talked about, but there's a flexibility as to when that bond has to be issued. And the way the current brownfield plans are working out, the payments are being accelerated. The Light one is ahead of the game. Founders Landing, more tax dollars are now coming in. So a lot of the bonds that you're referring to are going to be retired at a faster rate. So there is a balancing act, of course, but there is some flexibility, whether it's 3 years out that it gets purchased or 5 years out, so that, you know, that can be a reasonable, smart decision made by the city when to issue those bonds.
Thank you. I have another question for Mary. Mary, when you spoke about this project requiring a city bond, my understanding from a comment from Commissioner Stonehouse was that if the interlocal agreement wasn't approved by this board today, there would not be sufficient funding for this project to go forth. I want to make sure I understand that completely, that this decision we make today is go or no go.
I think the bonding element can be addressed later. We've certainly been talking out the timing of the bonds, the necessity of the bonds. So if this does move forward, those kind of questions can be addressed at that time. A project that is being proposed, so this parking project, certainly could not be afforded through bonding by the city as it stands right now. So this is really kind of an interesting way to approach getting some public infrastructure through this brownfield mechanism. I know you're kind of looking for that. If I don't approve it, I'm helping the city, and if I do approve it, I'm hindering the city. I don't really think that that's true intent. But the city certainly is looking at the bonding aspects of this and how it can work.
Well, first of all, Mary, I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you're addressing this with, because these are not easy questions and easy answers. This is, in my experience, and I've been attending just about every city commission meeting for the past 4 years, this is the most complicated development proposal I've seen. And you're smiling, so would you agree with that?
We have some, this is a very complicated issue.
Okay, so
it is specialized. So I welcome the questions because this does take a lot, and takes a lot of time for get people to wrap their brain around what's really going on. There's a lot of moving parts. So I agree with you. Yes, these are complex.
this is one of the, is it safe to say it's one of the most complex ones you've seen in your 10 years with the history? Oh, okay, then I stand corrected.
No, I've seen worse.
You've seen worse.
Yep.
I have several people gave me input before the meeting about how they would have access to the parking structure because they perceive, rightly or wrongly, they perceive that they would come a distant fourth to the hotel guests, the residents, the downtown workers who would rent space. And then if there was 1 or 2 spaces left over, there could be a free for all. See, I cannot answer their concern because the idea that the parking during the day would be for the people downtown and the parking at night would be for the hotel guests doesn't match with people's experience of parking at a hotel where you can park there till 11 or 12 in the morning when you check out, and the new guests come in anytime 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon. So for every guest in the hotel, there isn't going to be a parking spot for a local person to park in that garage, as you refer to it as public, in the morning, because the hotel guest car will still be, the vehicle will still be there. So I've heard architect Polson many times say, oh, it's a balance between the hotel won't need the spots during the day. And that just doesn't seem to be matching with my experience with hotels and checkout and other people's experience with hotels. And so I don't know how I can approve this when the parking, which is such a critical component of it, appears to be already focusing on the hotel guests, the residents, and the long-term parkers. And this is one of those things where if it was a parking garage that was just a parking garage with no hotel and no residents, then that would be embraced. We desperately need parking downtown, but the feedback I got in my own experience with hotels is I have driven into hotel parking lots that were allegedly public, and the person said, unless you're a hotel guest, you can't park here. And I'm not saying that's this experience. I'm just saying I've had that experience. Yeah. So perhaps not Mary, but perhaps someone can clarify, either the architect or the developers can clarify how the people of Marquette will have access to that garage if they're not a resident or if they're not a hotel guest. Because this is a real big point for the people who talk to me.
Absolutely, Margaret. So I'd love to address your concern. So first of all, the DDA would operate this parking deck. They have 100% of the control. The hotel, the developer, the DDA has 100% of the control. And some of the questions that have been being asked about, this parking is, I actually pulled the STR report, which is the report that all the hotels in Marquette, or the majority of the hotels in Marquette, report to. And on average, the occupancy rate is 54% for the entire year. If you took the year, that's the average occupancy rate of every hotel in the city of Marquette. So when you look at 95 guest rooms, there could be on average a potential of 40 vehicles in that parking structure in a given day. Our experience is less than 80% of our guests actually have a car. And I actually would guess that Marquette may have a higher percentage of people that do not have cars because they're flying in and they're taking a taxi or they're taking a shuttle from the airport or they have family in Marquette. And so you're looking at potentially, on an average day of the year, 30 to 40 vehicles from the hotel and the parking structure during basically from 7 p.m. to about 9 a.m. We also did a brief study of several hotels in Houghton and in Marquette that says about 80% of those vehicles have left the parking lot by 9 a.m. And I think if any one of the board members want to take this experience, drive around, the parking lots, at 9 o'clock at night, and then drive around at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you'll see most of those cars are gone. And most hoteliers will tell you the best time to figure out the occupancy of every hotel is to drive by at 5 in the morning. That's when the most cars of that hotel parking lot will be. And that's how you can really count what your competitors are doing. So when you look at that, there's over 200 total parking spots. The apartments, we hope that they don't need cars. That's why we're building downtown. That's a huge part of it. Yes, there could be some cars and some long-term permits being purchased by those residents, which is up to the residents to decide if they want to park in that structure. So say if there is even 36, there's 36 apartments, and there would be, 30, let's call it 35 or 40 potential people in the hotel on an average day. You're looking at, less than half, maybe 40% of the total occupancy of these 200 plus parking spaces being occupied by the facilities that are on site. So I think that provides ample public parking. Right now, there is absolutely no public parking on this property, none whatsoever. It is all privately owned. So you're adding a major capacity of parking. And I guess the comment was also made that, if there was just a parking garage there, you would have support for this. I think the issue with that being is, I think Mary and several other people brought it up, is the beauty of the brownfield is there is no capital expense to the city or to the DDA to build this parking structure. Our property taxes will be financing that property structure without money from the outside. And like Mac had mentioned, it's actually about a 46.5% grant that the state kicks in. So with no hotel, with no apartments, with no other activity on that site, there'd be no way to pay for that parking structure except for, taking taxes from existing operations, existing city taxes. So that's kind of the beauty of the brownfield, is it really provides that leverage. But I hope I answered your question on the available parking standpoint, because it's a good question.
And Margaret, they did, the DDA, or I'm sorry, the Brownfield Authority did set aside and did approve of funds to hire a parking consultant to answer those questions that you have.
Yeah.
So they specifically will figure out what the best way to operate it is, what the best ticketing system is, how much to charge for the spaces. That's what that consultant will do.
Yep. And that consultant works for the city, not us.
I appreciate what you just said. I have a follow-up comment / question. The hotel you're building, has it been rented yet? I mean, that hotel space, do you have a deal with a hotel chain to build a hotel, to occupy that hotel yet?
The hotel is our independent boutique brand.
Yeah, we are the operator of the hotel. It's
okay, you're the operators.
Correct.
So I want to propose a likely scenario for you, because I've seen, spent a lot of time in the last 2 weeks looking up your work and how it's marketed and how it's branded. And it's marketed very slickly, and it's branded not just in the Upper Peninsula, but in other locations as a destination source, Houghton especially. And I went to school in Houghton, and I did never consider it a destination source, but you have rebranded Houghton as a destination location. So as the owners of the hotel, your number one goal is going to be increase occupancy well above that 50%. You're going to, and I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but as the very competent marketers that you are, you're going to be marketing that hotel as a destination location for events, weddings, parties, reunions. You have outdoor space, you have outdoor views, the premier location in Marquette. So you are I did not understand this, and I apologize, there's just so much to absorb. You're the hotel owners. You will not be satisfied with 50% occupancy. You will be marketing to get that occupancy every weekend as high as you can make it. And I'm not saying that to criticize, I'm saying that's how you make your money, is by filling those hotel rooms. And that calls into question, I appreciate the 50% occupancy rate is maybe what it is now, but you have a track record in your businesses of changing what was into a super marketable destination location. So I don't believe going forward, the 50% figure, I just don't believe you're gonna settle for that. You're not gonna be happy as the owners of the business. Now, you're not bad people for wanting to have your hotel full all the time. But I also know that the two statements you make that don't match with my experience in traveling in the Upper Peninsula is you don't believe your guests are going to have vehicles. And there is no reliable public transportation from the airport to the hotel. That's a fact. I've tried public transportation. There isn't any. You take a cab, you pay a fortune. Or as you say, a friend picks you up. But if a friend picks you up, you're going to be staying in their camper in the backyard rather than at a destination hotel. So again, you're the owners of the hotel. You're going to want, I've done a little bit of hotel studying in terms of the months of the year. You're going to want that capacity for the weekends to be above 50% every weekend and to coincide it with all the events going on in Marquette. I get that. But the parking that you talked about at 9 in the morning, the parking garage is going to be available. Well, people who work downtown need to be able to park there 5, 6, 7, or 8. So I have to question the term public, because when the public needs to park for work, those spots are going to be full. When the public drops off at the hotel, with all due respect, I would be astonished if this hotel is built, that it ever drops below 75% occupancy. Again, I've seen your work marketing. It's everywhere. I've looked to LinkedIn. I've looked at all sorts of different places that you've marketed. So this idea that it's being shared with us as a public parking garage is my biggest concern about this project. I don't believe that it's being built for the benefit of the public. I believe that the hotel and the residents will take most of the parking, and that the other parking spaces will be leased out to long-term tenants who are going to be working across the street at the bank building. Oh. So if I put words in your mouth, please correct me. If you don't have a plan to double the capacity of your hotel, please share that with us, because that would be against all your marketing. And
so, Margaret, we did do the math for the commissioners, and I believe the last DDA meeting as well. Even at max capacity of the apartments, even at max capacity of the hotel, even with the hotel staff, there's still over 107 empty spots.
So even if and I think that's, that's the reality of it, is no matter how, if our operation, the private operation, is at 100% capacity, there's still at least half of, if not more, of that parking available for the public at any given time. And the reality is, and I challenge anybody to this, is drive around the parking lots of hotels at about 9 o'clock in the morning. You'll see from about 5 in the morning to 8 in the morning, more than half of those cars will be gone. By 9 o'clock, 80% of those cars are gone. And so when you look at, the operation of this parking structure, which again has 100% of the control is by the DDA, and they're going to be, their best interest is probably a healthy mix of, permits. I don't think leasing is the right term. I don't believe they'll be leasing of parking, because there's no designated spaces for anybody to park in this, or committed spaces. But they're going to be in control of who parks and how many people park in there, and how many longer term permits there are versus daily transient type permits. And the beauty of it is, a parking consultant will help the DDA shape the way those algorithms look and work based on their experience in the multitude of other cities they operate in. So, but I guess to come to your point, even if we were the best marketeers, which we hope we can be, but in all reality, there's not many hotels that run at 75% occupancy for any amount of time. And the market shows that 54.2% is the average Marquette hotel occupancy. We hope to do better. And even if we do, more than half of those spaces are still available for the public at peak demand for the on-site uses.
And I think that the peak demand is important. So I know you mentioned they're staying downtown, they're going to want to be downtown. And that is absolutely true. And in these destination markets where people are exploring these downtowns, they are also leaving to go hiking at Pictured Rocks or Presque Isle, or go and do these other things. When a traveler comes to town, UPTRA has done the financial analysis on that. And UPTRA is the UP Travel Association. So a traveler spends 20% of the money they bring to let's say Marquette, on their hotel. 80% of that is spent elsewhere in Marquette. 80% is spent at the restaurants, at the tourist attractions, at the destination, at the other items, helping the vitality of the rest of the downtown, of the rest of Marquette. Again, these people are coming to downtown, they're there overnight, but they are absolutely taking off for the day to go to Presque Isle, Pictured Rocks, wherever it may be.
Well, I think to echo that as well is, Marquette is a beautiful place. And what makes it so beautiful? It's our natural resources. It's, that's really the value of Marquette. Yes, the downtown is beautiful. The restaurants are beautiful, but at the end of the day, you can find great restaurants in a lot of places. There's a lot of Traverse cities in the world, as Matt can attest to. What you can't find and what you can't recreate are those natural resources. And those are the things that really truly drive tourism in the UP, and especially in Marquette. And those things don't exactly fall within a driving distance of downtown Marquette. There's a lot of assets and a lot of great things going on in downtown, but a lot of the reason and the destination of why people come to Marquette are the natural resources that exist in the surrounding areas. And we see that in Houghton big time. It's the same thing. They come to Houghton as a destination, but they're spending their day in Copper Harbor, in Eagle Harbor and Ontonagon, and they come back to Houghton because that's where the good restaurants and nightlife is.
I have two comments in response to these parking questions. Again, John mentioned there's 0 public parking now. This will add 200 plus spaces to the whole pot of parking in downtown Marquette. So even if other offices rent these spaces, they're going to free up other spaces. So it's for the betterment of downtown parking. The other thing is the hotel, like anybody using this parking structure, will be paying for it. The hotel will be paying for their guests to use the spaces. This is that revenue stream that the DDA will have to rely upon and actually profit upon to use in the entire parking system downtown. So that's all.
I have a response for the comment about how the DDA will have new parking spots. The survey that I saw of downtown Marquette is that the DDA currently estimated a shortage of between, forgive me, I'm not as good with the numbers as you are, but between 150 and 250 on a daily basis in terms of parking spots that people would like to have. So rather than accept the statement that there'll be additional parking, it'll be parking for people who don't have parking right now, rather than additional parking. And again, the questions that I got from people were, what's it going to cost me to park in that parking garage? And will I be able to find a spot? Because I'll be willing to spend a little bit of money to take my family downtown to go to a nice restaurant. But I've got family that can't walk up and down the hills. So if I'm going to drive them down there and I can't get a parking spot, the whole evening will be ruined. And this is an unfair question, but this is difficult decision-making. So that's when you get unfair questions. My apologies. I have to have a landline for part of my business. My apologies. What I'm asking now, back to John and I'm sorry, Jill, I think. What are you going to do as the owners of the hotel if the DDA won't give you enough parking spots for a destination event? Say, for example, you've got a wedding party coming in and you know that you're going to have 80 rooms full and you've got, the cards come back and you're going to need twice as many parking spots. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. What are you going to go to the DDA and say, we need to up our capacity for the weekend? Or are you just going to tell people, you don't have a parking spot in our structure, here's the other public parking? And
Well,
I think that's a reasonable question.
there's public parking across the street, which doesn't seem to be as attainable for downtown. It's across the street. That being said, it's close to that event center. And I know the DDA has their own operations that they're working through and how much they charge for parking all over the city. So I would assume that that would all be renegotiated or redetermined by the DDA when that time comes.
Well, the DDA recently installed its 3rd or 4th generation of parking meters downtown, making them one of the least beloved city agencies currently. I'm not being funny when I say that. The comments about parking downtown are never pleasant.
Right.
And therefore, this, I've asked a lot of questions and it's late, but let me sum up why I cannot vote for this. Number one, it's too expensive. When I hear the chief financial officer for the city talk about bonding limits and know that for the past 5 years, this city has bonded a huge project at least 3 times a year. I've been there where they bonded and bonded and bonded. And the chief financial officer says we're getting to the point on these bonds where it's going to be difficult. I have to fiscally say, what if next year the LDFA gets a great idea for the entrepreneurs and we can't get the money because we worked on this project? Number two, and I'm reading from a list I posted, I've looked at your structure and I have the advantage of having no sense of art, no sense of style, no sense. I have a utilitarian sense. I'm a chemical engineer by training. And the fact is your big project is a bunch of boxes on a hill. And there's ways to design it to make it fit on that hill. And with all due respect, the utilitarian functionalism in Marquette is best exemplified by the ore docks, because they're the most beautiful engineering I've ever seen. The railroad cars come down, they unload, they go back. There is none of the sense of utilitarian functionalism of your building. And I say that based on, I've been to your building. I've haunted your building space for the last 2 weeks. I've been there in the morning, evening, at night. I've been there when there's crowds. I've been there when there's no one. And I keep trying to see these boxes on a hill, and I don't see them as enhancing that area. I'm concerned about the destruction of that part of Lakeshore Boulevard due to the change in weather, because the normal patterns of wind, water, snow, and traffic of animals and plants will be tremendously disrupted. Because if you stand at the corner of Washington and Front, and I've done this, and you watch which way the wind blows, and you watch which way the rain goes, and you watch which way the birds come up from the lake, they follow different routes. And these big boxes don't have alleyways to let the wind through. The alleyways are more designed, with all due respect. I used to be the Veerling's dishwasher when I was I know very well the view from the back of the Veerling. And it was a 360, it was almost a 180 view. And what it is now, it's going to be just a straight on 90 view. It's not going to be the same. And then I don't feel comfortable lending money to people at this level right now. And I say that because we've just been through a terrible pandemic. City services took a cut. All last year, city employees were on furloughs. Part of what the LDFA is supposed to do is fund the future. We're supposed to look for entrepreneurs to fund. We're supposed to look for invented NMU events to fund. I have no trouble, saying those checks are well spent, but we have had in the last 5 years an abundance of development on Lakeshore Boulevard. And with all due respect to your boxes on a hill, the development you're proposing is just another in a long line of developments. And it's not required right now, as though some of them have been required versus planning, but this one isn't required. And I just feel we need to have a cushion in our money so we can buy things that we need to buy that we don't even know we need to buy yet. And that's why I cannot vote yes on the interlocal agreement. And that's all the questions and all the comments I had, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret, for that. Any other board members want to take a few minutes to
express your comments or questions.
I have a couple of questions. What do you project your occupancy when you're doing your financing with your banks or finance companies? What are you projecting with them on your occupancy levels?
We hope to achieve about 70% occupancy.
Okay.
And that'll be several years down the road. That's not an opening occupancy. That's by year 3.
Okay, and then what about the event we're in? When I hear a lot of developers talk right now that contractors can't get workers. With that, so if there's that type, if that creates a, all these construction projects, I'm sure that's we all know is delays all over the place. And how would that change? Are you under, you always have commitments for those financial, institutions. And so you have contingency plans for that in there in case, it's, your contractor says, hey, I can't get enough material, I can't get enough workers.
Yeah, we're well versed in that, and we're working with it right now. We've got several multi-million-dollar projects going on, and we definitely felt it. But we're also seeing that the page is starting to turn. May 2nd was the highest wood prices recorded in the United States history. They've dropped by about 50% since May 2nd of 2021. And so we're finally starting to see a normalization in building materials and labor availability for the first time really since the pandemic we started going back to work through the pandemic. So it's certainly a concern. It's a valid concern. We do have contingencies. Banks are very skittish right now. So our equity position in this project is very significant. And it has to be rightfully so, because we have to have contingencies in place in case things don't go how they're supposed to go. We do feel we have a high level of confidence with our construction team to be able to get this project done, on time and on budget. And we're currently doing it. So we've been experiencing the pitfalls of these things. And like Barry has, down the street at 2 Marketplace certainly as well. But definitely valid concerns and things that we're thinking heavily about.
Okay. So what is your break-even point, though? If you're projecting 70%, what do you realistically expect? Like, let's say, what's your bottom line, for example, on occupancy? If you averaged 40% or 50%, you have to, I guess, plan for the worst too, right? Not that I would expect this to be good. What is that number?
Well, most hotels, any hotel that gets financing typically has to be able to operate at a break-even down to 40% occupancy. So that's really the model you build off of.
All right, very good. And then I think I have a question for this decision here. If we make this decision tonight, or if we don't make this decision tonight, what are the ramifications to you? I mean, are you out of? I mean, Matt, do you know? Is there a limit on these brownfield credits?
No, there's not. The process has a timing component, and John and Jen can speak to that in terms of the approval process. And that is one of the things, it was an early process based on the development and the acquisition of the property that got, moved back and slowed down to be able to try and answer many of the questions that were there. So it would, a non-decision tonight would delay the process in the project, and John and Jen can perhaps speak to that on the development side.
Correct. Yeah. We're under a contract to acquire the property, and part of our due diligence is trying to, respectfully redevelop this property. And that's why we're really going after this opportunity with Brownfield to build public parking that allows us to build to a smaller scale, that gives, affords us to build these view sheds and affords us to respect our neighbors and have, those conversations, to be able to incorporate their needs and wishes to the plan. So at the end of the day, we've put together a schedule that we've kind of kept kicking back based on feedback from the different commissions. And so, yeah, it would be a real setback to not have a decision tonight.
Any other board members?
No.
I'll go ahead and make the motion just to see where the motion goes, that we approve the interlocal agreement.
I'll support that.
Thank you, Jim. I can call for a vote. I don't know if there's any other comment, if I do this after, but I can call for.
I have comment though.
Okay.
I'm all for this project. And by the way, John and Julian, I think thank you for having your interest in Marquette. I'm happy to move this forward. I don't want to impede you in any way. I want this development. I do have some concerns about this budgetary because there is a lot thrown at us tonight and a lot of moving parts. And I don't want to delay because I don't like that one bit, but I'm very concerned about the city budget. I'm very concerned about yours. In no way do I want this to impede your progress or get this done. I think this is wonderful and you're willing to take that chance. I'm supporting you, but I don't know if I can make that decision tonight without having a few other questions answered about the budget and the financing of it all and the effects, just to be a prudent person on a board to make sure that, not that it's my job to protect municipalities or anything, but I am a citizen and I want to make sure that we're not getting in over our heads, where we're at. And again, if we could have a meeting, I don't know. So I'm having a hard time saying, I like your project. I would say yes in a heartbeat if I had some questions answered, and mostly just to make sure, alleviate my budget concerns with this. I think, Barry, to your point on parking and I think traffic, if this project goes through, and I hope it does, and hope it comes to completion, I think traffic, but that's the way we'll have to deal with it, will be much more congested in Marquette on such a well-traveled area, both for pedestrians and autos. But that's my dilemma tonight.
If I could make one comment, would that be okay? Dan, this is really the sort of the enabling piece to this, as the budget, as the Brownfield Plan and the interlocal agreement is part of that Brownfield Plan, because it sets aside the potential revenues. These agreements that have to take place, the city's not going to issue a bond without all sorts of assurances in place. We've got a financial consultant that works through all of those kind of considerations, for that. So there'll be a number of contract arrangements on the implementation side that we'll address. And I'm pretty certain that we won't get the full faith and credit unless Mary goes, yeah, we're okay. So this provides the enabling component for that, but there'll be a whole, series through those 3 different agreements of discussions, conversations, arrangements, assurances, obligations, security requirements, all of those sorts of things. So this is really kind of the first step of enabling a budget. And then those contracts, will be part of that. Now, the LDFA is not party to those contracts, but certainly the city will be and will strongly represent their interest as I have over the last 12 years as well.
I do have another point. I'm sorry I said I wasn't going to make another point, but I'm going to. I think we're kidding ourselves if we don't understand what's happening here. If we vote yes on this interlocal agreement, the pressure on the city commission to approve this project will go up by an exponential factor, because they will feel the pressure saying, oh, we run our timeline, we had to have a special meeting and they approved it. So since they approved it, we are under more pressure to do this. This is one of the concerns that I had when the special meeting was scheduled. I felt very pressured, and I've gathered as much information as I can. Late last night, I was still asking questions. I just said I cannot vote on this interlocal agreement to approve it tonight. I could vote to postpone the approval until the next regularly scheduled meeting, which I believe is the 19th, which will give us time to have the public hearing of the city commission so we can maybe get more of these questions answered. But that's the best I can do. I cannot vote for this. And these questions about financing, and with all due respect to the developers, first they tell us, oh, you don't have to worry about parking. Most hotels run at 54%, but oh yeah, we've said in 3 years, there's going to be 75% capacity. And that means whatever parking we start with, it's going to get less and less. And again, these statements that contradict common sense just keep flowing through the narrative. And I keep coming back to, is it public? and I don't see it that way. So, Madam Chairperson, I can't vote to approve this, but I would have support a motion to table the approval till after the next city commission meeting. I don't know how the other board members feel.
I have a question on that sequence, if you don't mind. So if we don't approve it, can that meeting on the 19th go, or the public meeting go on without this approval tonight? Because Mac, is that true? Or Leslie, you know?
That was what I was going to ask for clarification on is, so the city commission meeting next, I understand that the DDA meets tomorrow and then the city commission on Monday. I don't know what the outcome or how this plays into that meeting on Monday. So if anybody can elaborate, maybe John.
Yeah, I can try and respond to that. Maybe Sean has a follow-up. The meeting on Monday is the public hearing. There is a resolution for consideration for approval of the Brownfield Plan. The public hearing may continue without action, and the city commission, as we've seen, has its own mind, and they may decide not to support the project no matter what happens here. But the public hearing could proceed without action.
So
If that's part of the question.
And I guess if I can make a comment, and Sean can back this up, but we as developers were directed to go and get, to get decisions from the LDFA and the DDA prior to going to the city commission, that was a request of the city commission. And Sean, if you could verify that too.
Yeah, I think, I don't really want to speak for the city commission necessarily, but it is something that they wanted to see. They wanted to see the, the taxing entities, because the city, city tax fund isn't affected by this because all the capture is done by either the DDA, the state, the LDFA, the schools. The city tax capture is not really affected by this project. They wanted to see the taxing entities that were affected, namely the DDA and the LDFA, approve the interlocal agreement first. So they were looking for that approval, I believe.
Correct. And I think to real briefly touch on Dan's comment about the bonding capacity, and I'm sure Mary can make a comment about this as well. And Mac had said, this is kind of the enabling, this is like step one. There's the operating agreement, there's a reimbursement agreement, there's a development agreement that all, have to fall in place after this. And, those are the agreements that really spell out the details of the financing and the bond capacity. And as I think Mac had said, and Mary can, I'm sure, speak to this, they're not good. The city isn't going to accept a bond that puts themselves in jeopardy for anything that they want to look at in the future. And Mac and myself and our development team, we're working on those financial models to make sure that is something that can be achieved, and it looks like it can be.
I'm just not sure that it's our job to go up and down on the overall project. I think it's our job to determine whether we're willing to let the capture go from the LDFA. So, and I think that's staying in our lane a little bit more than some of the other questions that are being raised, at least from my perspective. So I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
So Brian, I'd say your 2 cents is correct. It's not our job to be the finance directors and be the
and
that vetting. We're trying to decide whether to give our support to moving forward just on this interagency agreement. That's what I'm understanding, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I guess that's why they have public meetings and so on. So if we move forward from here, I guess that's what the public meetings and the vetting process for those other procedures are for. Ours is just to decide whether we want to approve it for the opportunity for this funding with an interagency agreement.
That's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, well said, Brian.
Brian, I appreciate what you're saying. I just want people to know that as a member of this board, if the board votes to go forward with this interlocal agreement, I'll be resigning immediately because I cannot speak against this project if I'm a member of this board if they voted to approve it. Therefore, if we vote to approve this interlocal agreement, I'll be resigning immediately after this meeting. I don't take this statement like if I can't have my own way, I'm going to take the ball and go home. This project has generated more negative feedback than anything I've seen in Marquette in the last 4.5 years. And it's negative feedback up and down and sideways from people, with all due respect to the brilliance of your development, who don't want to see another big box of expensive housing on Lakeshore Boulevard. And I appreciate the public parking aspect. That's why I've drilled down so hard on it, because we desperately need more public parking downtown because we lack public transport. But I don't believe the public parking aspect is enough to justify this board foregoing revenue that we're supposed to allocate to the smart zone and invented NMU and other, like changing from a dead restaurant into a bank, or changing a dead building into a restaurant and some housing. I don't think that fits with our charter. So I don't mean to be dramatic, but the fact is, I've thought this all the way through. I can't support this. And I can't stay on this board and go in front of the commission, because then I'd have to be absolutely quiet. And I cannot be quiet about this. I've had nothing. And with all due respect to the developers and the architect, I have not had one person say, this is a good idea. And that's rare, because usually, no matter what I say, I get about 20 people saying you're wrong. And in this particular circumstance, I just haven't had anybody say this is a good idea. So my apologies for the amount of time I spoke tonight. I take this very seriously. If we vote tonight and the vote is to approve this agreement, my resignation will be submitted immediately. For this reason, I cannot support this. Thank you for your time and listening.
I have a question, Leslie, if maybe you know this, is how much revenue would we be giving up for the our cause if we support it?
Let me.
Right now, you're currently, on this capture on this parcel, the LDFA captures $600 annually.
That's what I was going back
When
to.
approved, that gets capped, so you will continue to collect that capture throughout this project.
And there's no loss.
Huh?
I guess if I could speak, there's no loss in revenue, correct? Mary.
Margaret, I have a question for you.
We're not taking away from our revenue stream that much.
My understanding from a comment I received, I think it was from Mac right before this meeting, I think the number you gave me was $6 million. Can you address that?
The total state tax capture proposed for the project for all of the activities is $8 million. And so, 50% of that is $4 million approximately. But again, there would be no revenue, there's no project, there's no revenues,
Right.
Without the project.
Thank you.
Dan, were you about to make a comment too, or question?
No. I was just looking at $600. That's what you said we would give up. And I guess with Margaret, what else do you see us giving up as far as dollars and your lack of your strong voice for wanting to resign? Because is it just because of the project, not because of the lack of revenue that we would be reallocating, or actually we're not giving up anything?
Daniel, I really appreciate the question and the tone of your voice when you asked it. The answer is, I've been on this committee several years now, and I have enthusiastically voted yes every time we took taxpayers' dollars and put it into the smart zone, put it into invented NMU, and put it into local businesses, because that fit the basic for what this committee was set up to do. This particular project and its location is a highly sensitive area in Marquette that has had, separate from the LDFA, There is no one part of Marquette that has more construction on it in the past 5 years than Lakeshore Boulevard. And in this particular case, the LDFA's ability to capture future taxes going forward is impacted by this, as is, and I'm a member of the city as well, this bonding issue is really a deal breaker for me. It's too expensive. And the people that I talk to about it, even the ones that love development along the lakeshore, are like, they're boxes. And with all due respect, the savings bank is unique. It has a unique shape. It had a unique purpose. And everyone I spoke to said, why are we replacing the savings bank uniqueness with boxes? And I don't have an answer for that. But the bottom line, Daniel, is I've never talked to anybody about the work I do with the LDFA and received nothing but negative feedback. And then I went looking for people I don't normally talk to, and nothing but negative feedback. Then I went and stood on the corner and looked at it and looked at it. And I saw how close it was to a super congested area. And Lakeshore Boulevard right now is barely navigable with all the construction. This is another 5 years of construction followed by 75% capacity is the goal. So I've never done this before, by the way. I'm not a person who quits because I don't get my own way, but I simply cannot support this amount of development on Lakeshore Boulevard without, how can I phrase this? No, I can't support it. And that's the bottom line. And since I can't support it, I can't continue on the committee if they vote to support it. I simply can't.
So Margaret, if you wouldn't mind if I just intervene for just a couple of things to add there. So the boxes in question still have to hit design phase. You're not seeing the final facades. You're not seeing the final brick colors. You're not seeing the final facades of those buildings. And Barry can attest to that. You know, this is put together for the Brownfield plan. This is to show you scale and situation.
And I think, you know, having been intimately involved in the smart zone in Houghton since the beginning, really, since the first, I can't think of his name, the first guy that ran it, and with Marilyn Clark. Marilyn Clark's a dear friend of mine. Ray Johnson in Marquette is a good friend of mine. You know, when I think about the value of a project like this, and just, I'll give the example in Houghton. You know, some of our best clients are smart zone clients. You know, when we try to, I'll give you a perfect example. There was a smart zone client in Houghton that was trying to raise funds to grow their company, sell equity, you know, venture capital in their company. And the day we opened, that owner of that company was one of the shining stars of the smart zone of Houghton, came to us and said, "Oh my gosh, I am so glad you guys did this. This is what we need when we bring Silicon Valley investors to Houghton. We need to be able to show and pay homage to how amazing of a place this is. Houghton and Marquette, the whole UP, it's an amazing place. I talked about it, you know, at length. It's the natural resources. And to be able to back that up with a experience-based product like what we do at the Vault, has really helped them. And that company recently raised $20 million in selling equity for their company. And they are on their way to become one of the largest employers in Houghton, in the aerospace industry. And who would have thought the space industry out of Houghton, Michigan? And I think, you know, that's one of the exciting things for us about Marquette is that they have a smart zone, you know, and they have a lot of really cool things going on. And Dave Oyla was, you know, coming up here when he first got involved in Vent NMU, because we owned a skateboard manufacturing company up here in Houghton. It was one of the cool things that happened in the UP. And, you know, man, it would have been so cool that when the governor came here, you know, back in, it was Governor Snyder a few years ago, that we could have been able to have them stay in Houghton. And at the time they didn't. They flew their plane back to Lansing. And one of their comments was they just, you know, they didn't have a hotel they wanted to stay in. You know, so it's a part of, I think there's a huge value to the smart zone in Marquette specifically, to having this type of resource right next door, to having a makerspace within the building of this to help develop and foster those relationships with the people coming out of Innovate Marquette and the Smart Zone, to be able to attract the type of investments that they need to be able to grow their businesses. And I think the shining example is, the group that invested $20 million in Houghton has stayed at our hotel several times and complimented our services that we're able to provide. So I think we're super excited to be able to help the Smart Zone and help Marquette foster the entrepreneurship. We're entrepreneurs at our core. That's who we are. And we couldn't pay more respect to what you guys do at the LDFA than many other people could.
That's a very good success story for the people of Houghton. I went to school in Houghton, and I will agree with you, it's an undeveloped part of the Upper Peninsula. However, when you challenge the need for a new specialty hotel in downtown Marquette, I can think of half a dozen hotels that you could put up the President of the United States in, and he would have thought that he had had a local experience. So adding another hotel to a building to take advantage of its uniqueness and then make it as boxy as you can make it. And I apologize for the bluntness of this statement, but there's a past track record with the architect you've chosen to work with. And you can see it along Lakeshore Boulevard. And I could not find anyone to say anything productive about that architect or his development of Lakeshore Boulevard. And I didn't talk to architect, I didn't talk to everybody in Marquette, but I talked to more than 100 people. And when your name came up associated with this project, there wasn't anybody who didn't remind me what past projects on Lakeshore Boulevard had started out to be and ended up being. And this is a negative that your choice of architect is yours. Your choice of business is yours. I cannot vote to put another luxury hotel on a very busy corner for people of Marquette to drive by. And they can't afford to stay in it. They can't afford to have their relatives stay in it. They can't afford to park there if there is a parking structure. And when the snow removal on Lakeshore Boulevard is less than what it is now because of this luxury development, they will not benefit from any of this. So I'm basing the statement that I feel strongly enough about it. When I didn't hear one person in favor of this, I thought, who do I represent? I'm on the Local Development Finance Authority. I've had no problem with what they've done in the past. Enthusiastically refer people to this. I'm not just a chemical engineer and an attorney, I'm a patent attorney. You're not the first entrepreneurs I've met. I've met thousands of entrepreneurs. You have the gleam in your eye, you have the forward looking, you know your numbers, you know your products, whether you start with skateboards and end up with luxury hotels, that's not the issue. The issue is Lakeshore Boulevard is beyond capacity right now. The development you're talking about is very suspect in terms of what it's going to be based on the track record of the person that you've chosen to associate with. And I promised a couple of people that if I couldn't stop it here, I would resign and go to the commission and express my concerns there, because my family's been in Marquette for 96 years. My grandfather built those oil tanks that everybody complains that were ugly. Well, they may have been ugly, but they were functional. And there should have been a difference between ugly functional tanks and what we have now. But we don't have that difference. We just have one person deciding how Lakeshore Boulevard looks. So this is the truth, and it's coming from my brain, it's coming from my experience, and it's coming from my heart. I will not say it's okay if we sign this today, somebody else will catch it, somebody else will stop it. It has to be part of my life that I say this is not okay. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate you've been successful. I gotta wonder why you're down in Marquette if you're so successful in Houghton, but that's not my business. It's only a 2-hour drive. That's all. Again, Leslie, I know this meeting has gone way too long, but I'm not exaggerating when I say I can't.
I appreciate the comments, and I kind of want to circle us back together, I guess. I think it's a big ask for us to, but I think what we're being asked is about the parking space, what Dan had mentioned, or giving up our tax rights to the parking area. And I don't want to necessarily hold up the process, but I want to make sure that we're making the right decision for the committee or community. So I would, I guess, welcome if any other board members want to suggest a delay on the vote, or if we want to take this to a vote now.
I think we have, since there's been a motion and a
Motion.
second, we have to have that vote first.
Okay, so I'll take a vote to support the interlocal agreement with the Brownfield and the vault project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Who said aye?
Brian did. Jim
Okay.
did.
Brian and Jim said aye.
Yep.
Dan, did you say you voted yes?
Nay.
I'm
No.
Did you
sorry.
say,
We're doing the project, right? We're voting on the motion. Read the motion to me again.
the motion is that we accept, or that I would sign accepting the interlocal agreement with the Marquette Brownfield Authority and the Vault Marquette.
Wasn't there a second motion on this? What was
Jim,
Go ahead.
so Brian moved for the motion and Jim supported.
All right. So I would say no. Anybody else?
Leslie
Margaret.
has,
Margaret says no.
So
I don't know that I can be a tiebreaker in my, or I don't know what we need for a, we have 5 people. Sean, can you clarify?
I believe the count's 2 and 2 right now, so you're the only one who hasn't voted. The
Yeah.
chair can vote, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you have to vote actually, but yeah.
say that again?
I think you have to vote and everything.
Yeah, I would vote yes. So is that a majority? Is that what we need to carry it forward, or do we have to have more
More.
than?
No, there's 3-2 vote for my count.
What happened to Mark Canali?
He dropped off quite a while ago.
Do you mind if we say something, Leslie?
Go ahead.
We just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be here today and to listen to our presentation. We have actually had a lot of positive feedback on this. And I know there is, with any large project, there's going to be a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions. We've had calls to our office, multiple calls of people getting excited about it, other business owners in downtown Marquette wanting to be a part of it. So we're really excited that there's support here. So thank you.
Yeah. Again, just thank you for the conversation too. And even, Margaret and Dan, we appreciate your thoughts and those are the conversations that make a good project. It's you have to have the hard ones to make the right decisions. So we appreciate those too.
Well, thank you. If I could comment, and I would, I just have some more questions in my mind. I'm all for your project. I think it's wonderful. And again, I'm not here for impeding. I think it's up to you to fail or make it go, but I just have some questions in my mind. And tonight I just felt I couldn't give you a positive affirmative to go with it until those are answered. So when it was put to me that way, I just got to say no until I can get those answered, but it doesn't matter now at this point.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Don and Joe, you'll see me again, but the next time you see me, I'll be speaking on behalf of myself and not any connection with this committee. You presented your project well. Hello, Mark.
I got booted out.
You missed the vote.
I apologize for that. I just got booted out while you were talking about the parking issue. I tried to get back in and it just let me in.
Madam Chairperson, is it possible to reopen the vote now that we have another member?
don't know what the city attorney, how that would go. Sean, can you advise us on that?
How did the vote go?
What'd you say?
What was the outcome of the vote?
3 in favor, 2 opposed. I believe the vote's concluded.
Okay, well, I was gonna vote for it. But if it's concluded, they obviously, they won, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments from the LDFA members?
I have a,
My
Go
final
ahead.
comment, sorry, Margaret, just to jump in, was I didn't say much during the discussion piece, but yeah, personal opinions on concepts of appearance and everything else. I don't think that was the purpose of our role in this decision, so that's why I voted yes. It was just a matter of approving the concept of the collection of revenue from the project, the potential project that may or may not be ultimately approved, but
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments from the board? I would second Jim's comment that our ask was on the parking. And to Margaret, to some of your comments, I would just say, you stood your position and you expressed your concerns. I think that, and that's all, on record here. And I know from my perspective, we would want you to continue on in this board. And
if I continue on with this board, I'm not allowed to speak aloud against this project again. That's the rule. If your board votes in favor of something, you're not allowed to speak against it. I went through this with Commissioner Stonehouse when I was applying for boards. He made it very clear that once the board makes a decision, you either support it or you leave the board to be able to express your opinion. This particular project, I never heard more negative feedback on anything in the last 4 years. Therefore, it's not an easy thing for me to do. I appreciate being allowed to serve on this committee, but I also can't abide people saying we just did this part and it's up to other people to do their part, because the snowball is rolling down the hill now, and this board just made it easier for the next board to say, yeah, the LDFA said it was okay, so we're going to say it's okay. And by the time the snowball hits the commission, they're going to have the weight of these prior decisions behind them. And Lakeshore Boulevard will never be the same. So I don't know how to resign, Leslie. I don't mean to be stupid about it, but I will send you an email and I'll send a copy of the mayor and the city commission and just give the same reason that I gave. I can't support the decision. And then other people will do what they do, because everybody has an opinion about this. And the simple truth is, I didn't exaggerate the feedback that I got, and I didn't exaggerate the concerns that I heard. So that's all. I mean, I keep saying that's all, but that really is all. It's 2 hours and it's been brutal.
Okay. All right, any other comments, and then I'll move to adjourn. Okay. It's 6:11 and I don't think I have to have a vote for adjourning, right? I call our meetings. Thank you.
We're done.
I appreciate everyone's time.